You're listening to Winnipeg's Classic 107. My name is Simon Rusnak. Tomorrow, Tuesday, March 30th, the Women's Musical Club of Winnipeg presents pianist Madeline Hildebrand in concert online. Now, no stranger to Winnipeg stages, nor a stranger to Classic 107 listeners. She's joined me now ahead of the premiere to chat a little bit more about the program. Hello, Maddie.
Hi, Simon.
Great to see you.
Thanks for having me.
Oh, of course. Well, I want to start off by talking a little bit about the Women's Musical Club of Winnipeg. After a year of silence, for reasons I think we can all guess, music returns to the city courtesy of the WMC. Yours will be the first performance in quite a while. How does that feel?
Well, it's a celebration, and it's also a celebration of you know learning all about the tech world, right? Us acoustic musicians haven't and recital presenters who have been listening to live acoustic music for such a long time are learning so much about the tech side of things, and it's a major hurdle for an organization that has never done that to learn how to do that. And so I am excited that I'm the first online presentation that the WMC is presenting, and yeah, I'm like, I hope it's not tacky to say I'm proud. I'm proud that
You
that
should be
this
proud. You should be
organization,
proud.
that is over 100 years old, is has adapted to an online setting like this, and I'm proud that I'm their first premiere as well. So it's going to be a fun celebration.
I think that's exactly it, right? It's something to celebrate, and
Mm-hmm.
you just alluded to it. I mean, the Women's Musical Club of Winnipeg, founded back in 1894. COVID-19 isn't even the only global pandemic that they've faced, which is just so remarkable. But like you say, overcoming these challenges, finding new ways to connect with the audience. I know WMC has been a supporter of yours for a long time. Tell us a little bit about your musical involvement with the Women's Musical Club of Winnipeg.
Sure. Well, my involvement is not unlike so many other Manitoba musicians that have grown up in Manitoba and currently live in Manitoba. The Women's Musical Club is a huge supporter of young artists, and this is evident through their scholarship competition every year in May. Winners of that competition get to be part of their series in a recital every December. And then in the last, what is it, decade and a half or so,
Mhm.
they have been hosting what they call the McClellan competition, which is a major competition for artists that either are currently studying in Manitoba or have Manitoban roots. And this competition gives away a huge amount, $20,000 in total, and also allows their three finalists to perform works with the Winnipeg Symphony Orchestra, which is just huge for a young artist. And lucky enough, and I'm grateful that um, I have been a prize winner in a few of these competitions. So the Women's Musical Club has been a supporter of mine, and I feel sort of indebted to them. I love them. I love the Women's Musical Club, and but my experience is not unlike a lot of young artists out there. So
You've put together a really diverse program for the Women's Musical Club. Couperin, Rachmaninoff, Southam, Brahms. I'm curious, is there a thread which weaves all these compositions together, or is it more just embracing diversity in your programming and performing pieces that you just really want to put out there?
definitely the latter.
Nothing wrong with that.
It's a sampling of music and styles and piano repertoire that I have loved and or I do love and is near and dear to my heart. I also feel like it's necessary to say that I'm in the midst of my doctoral degree at Stony Brook University in New York, and part of the degree is performing many recitals throughout the year. And so I've been working on real varied styles of piano repertoire. So a lot of what the audience will hear tomorrow is a good sampling of what I work on with my peers and with my professors. So yeah, it is a varied program, but all of the music is I think just it speaks for itself, and I like to think I've chosen some pretty stellar repertoire and composers.
Yeah, there's some really great stuff in here, and we're going to highlight just a couple of them now, beginning with Anne Southam, who has a Winnipeg connection. Let us not forget she was here for at least a very short while. Now, I understand you're doing a lot of research on Anne Southam. Tell us a little bit more about her and glass houses.
Sure. So Anne Southam was, yes, born in Winnipeg, but she spent most of her life living in Toronto, where she taught and composed. And she did actually a lot of work with the Toronto Dance Company. She composed actually a lot of electronic music for the Toronto Dance Company. And it's here where she really found her voice. Now, of course, another big component of Anne Southam's composition style is the piano and piano music. And she is Canada's minimalist composer. She was actually inspired by some of the minimal features of Philip Glass's music, which is the namesake for the piece that I'll be playing, Glass Houses number 11. And what I find so playful and wonderful about Anne Southam's music is that minimalist composers, people often talk about how you can lose your sense of time when listening to minimalist music. It's quite repetitive and meditative, and time can either stop or time can become vast and open. But Anne Southam takes this a step further, and she actually compares her style of composition to domestic tasks that one can do around the house, like stitching and knitting and even doing the dishes. And if any of the listeners are familiar with those tasks, they might also find that they can, in those repetitive motions, sort of lose time. So Anne Southam exposes this idea of time and repetitive motions. And what I find so playful about glass houses is that in the repetitive ostinato patterns, they're really complicated. And in order to do them well, it's almost like you have to stop thinking about them. But I have done a lot of crocheting and knitting. And once you can get into the pattern of that stitch, if you think about it a little too hard and you drop a stitch, your momentum is lost. And the same thing can happen in this glass houses, which I just think is so playful and interesting and incredible that Anne Southam could connect these two ideas of domestic tasks and a piano ostinato. Ostinato meaning, once again, a repetitive pattern.
Yeah, I mean, there's a sort of mindlessness in those tasks, like when
Yeah.
you're doing the dishes or
Mhm.
crocheting or doing
Mhm.
anything like that, where you just kind of check out. Maybe you're thinking about something else and you let the mind wander. And I
Yeah.
mean, it's interesting you talk about how you almost have to let your mind wander when you're performing this music, which
Mhm.
sounds so counterintuitive. It sounds like no, you need to be invested in what you're playing. But
Mhm.
but here it is the opposite, which is so I mean, it's just fascinating when you really think about it.
Yeah.
You mentioned the inspiration, Philip Glass, a fellow you perform with. I got to get it in there every time, and there is some Philip Glass on the program. If we go way back, leaving minimalism and jump way back to the Baroque now, I mean, you're working on your doctorate.
Mhm.
You're reading a lot of theses, I imagine, and some very technical documents and things like that. That's
Yeah.
exactly in a way what this is, right? This music of Couperin and his thoughts on the harpsichord and how to best play
Right.
it.
Yes. So um, every Tuesday night, my piano peers and I meet with one of our professors. His name is Gilbert Kalish. And we talk about, we focus in on either one collection of works or a certain style. So we're about to embark on ragtime. But in the first semester, we talked all about Bach partitas, and in the early second semester, we talked about Couperin's preludes. Now we invited our harpsichord professor Arthur Haas to join us pianists, and we learned so much about Baroque practice. And actually, what I took away the most from these sessions was the freedom actually behind Baroque music. So Arthur Haas introduced our class to this treatise from 1716 called The Art of Playing the Harpsichord. And in this treatise, you get all sorts of very funny instructions that I think a lot of people would question today, like, for example, a harpsichord teacher should warm up their students' hands by pulling their fingers and stretching their fingers for them.
You don't do that? That's not how you warm up? Oh, that's why I never really was a great pianist. I've been doing it wrong all this time, Maddie.
I would say that it's that's an unusual. I mean, stretching, yes, but having somebody pull your fingers for you, that would be an unusual practice of the day. Other interesting things are, people that do hard labor with their hands. Those hands should not be playing the harpsichord.
Hmm.
Just funny ideas that I think we would all question today. But of course, there are so many other incredible things in this treatise, ideas about pulse, and like I said before, freedom in the music. And when I say freedom, I mean not being necessarily tied to a strict metronomical feeling. And I have really enjoyed finding this freedom in these Couperin preludes. I've also really enjoyed how ornamented they are.
Mhm.
French Baroque practice includes a lot of decoration of figures and melodies with trills and mordents and appoggiaturas. And this was, in a sense, a way for the performer to show off a little. So I'm loving the showiness of the ornaments. I'm loving the freedom of the music, and I owe that a lot to these Tuesday night classes with Gil Kalish and Arthur Haas.
Well, if you're just tuning in, my name is Simon Rusnak. You're listening to Winnipeg's Classic 107, and I'm chatting with Madeline Hildebrand, who performs in the Women's Musical Club of Winnipeg first show of 2021, an online presentation. Now, Maddie, we talked a little bit about Anne Southam and Francois Couperin, and like I say, there's a lot of composers on this program, very diverse. You're just exploring what you want to explore. There's also Rachmaninoff and Brahms, and then the last composer I want to talk about, even though this concert is happening in March.
Mhm.
You're performing a cool piece of music by a composer by the name of Vyacheslava Kaprilova. Tell us about her. I'm not familiar with her or her music.
Great. Well, first of all, you say her name so beautifully. You say it better than I do.
I just tried. I went for it.
Kaprilova was a Czech composer, and she lived from 1915 to 1940, which is not a long time.
Mm-mm.
In her 25 years living on this earth, she managed to put out a staggering amount of music. I have been drawn to her idea of harmony. Her tonality is quite unique. Just to get a little cerebral here, she uses a lot of bitonality, meaning like if one hand is playing a C triad, the other hand is playing a faraway harmony, an F sharp major triad. So
Ooh.
I like her tonality and sense of harmony. Also, I think that she has such a unique orchestral sound. Now, she's a composer that wrote a lot of orchestral music, and I hear that in the piano repertoire. I hear like rumbles and tremolos in the bass, and then soaring flutes in the right hand over top of that, and melodies kind of coming out of a technical way of saying it is like a rumbly texture. So I enjoy her sound, and these April preludes are a beautiful staple, or at least I feel they should be a staple of the piano repertoire. And we're in an amazing time right now where we're exploring voices, and we're exploring representation in um, with composers, and programming repertoire that we feel should be heard. And Kaprilova is one of those composers that I have a feeling we're going to hear a lot more of, even though she lived in the early 20th century. I feel like now she's about to embark on her time now.
Well, thank you for sharing her musical voice in your concert with the Women's Musical Club, and most certainly one that we'll have to add to the Classic 107 library. I mean, I feel like
Yes.
we're constantly adding new stuff, but I mean, there's just so much music to be discovered, and that's just it. So
Mhm.
thank you for that sense of adventure that you bring, and then enlightening the rest of us and adding to our ears and our playlists. And so it should be a wonderful show, free of charge. It streams through the Women's Musical Club of Winnipeg website. Maddie, thanks for taking the time today.
Thanks so much, Simon.